Today, Vergen's Chief of Police, George Merkel, who is also a former president of the Vermont Association of Chiefs of Police, joins us to discuss the impact of the opioid crisis on local law enforcement and the carnage that the epidemic is leaving in its wake. Chief Merkel, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Could you tell us how the opioid epidemic in Vermont has affected local law enforcement?
Well, it's created quite a problem for us on all aspects. We obviously deal with the calls where we deal with people who are on opiates. Certainly there's a safety concern when we deal with people like that, because we really don't know what we're dealing with. And it's not just heroin. Heroin itself presents a problem, but there's other things that come with it. You know, there's mixtures. You may have heroin and alcohol, you may have heroin and fentanyl. And anytime we're dealing with any type of illicit drug, that presents a safety issue for the police officers. And again, we don't know how people are going to react while they're on them. Certainly from the safety standpoint on the highways, public safety, we've seen more and more evidence of that. Some people may argue and say that we're getting better at just detecting people, which is probably some truth to that.
Right.
But we are running into more and more instances where people on drugs are driving impaired. Right. And there's been an uptick. Back in the day, it used to be primarily alcohol, and now it's, I think it's 2-to-1 drugs versus alcohol. Okay. And there's some places in the state that may not be the case. But overall, I think there is. I think last year, and don't quote me, but I think last year we had somewhere in the vicinity of 65 fatalities due to impaired driving, and a good percentage of those were drugs. Okay. And so you've got the highway safety issue, you've got the officer safety issue,
right.
And you know, the part that people don't, well, people do realize it, but it doesn't come to the forefront as much as what it does to the families. I mean, for law enforcement, we have to respond to these cases where somebody is doing something while they're on drugs.
Right.
And it's when you deal with the families and you see what, you use the word carnage, that's exactly what it is, because these drugs are literally tearing families apart. It's the spouses, it's the moms and dads, it's the brothers and sisters. And when you go to a home, it's tough. It's tough.
We've seen how many grandparents have become parents, second parents to the children, to their grandchildren, because their children are addicts or have passed away. So, I mean, there's a death toll that's taking a toll on the children as well, on the grandparents.
It goes across the board. And I was listening to I think it was 60 Minutes on Sunday, and they were talking about how many thousands of people died in the United States. I think it was 47,000. And to me, that just shocked me.
Right.
That's almost as many people that died in the entire Vietnam War.
And more than that, actually. So this has become the most fatal public health crisis in U.S. history. And
not to mention the fact that drugs themselves, like I say, are bad. Right. There's nothing redeeming about any type of drug use. And then on top of that, now we've got fentanyl and carfentanil. And if you watch that program, it's shocking. There was a bag of carfentanil that the federal agent was saying that was enough to kill everybody in the city of Cleveland.
I look at it as chemical weapons that are coming in from China, fentanyl and heroin from Mexico. You said that in Manchester there was a fentanyl.
I believe it was in Manchester, New Hampshire. I mean, Manchester, Vermont. It may have been in Manchester, New Hampshire. You can check that. But there were two guys that were contacting a motor vehicle stop, and they had cocaine and fentanyl.
Wow.
And fentanyl is an extremely dangerous drug. It's dangerous to the user. It's dangerous to anybody that comes in contact with it.
Chief Merkel, this was very informative. Do you mind sticking around for one more week?
Not a problem.
Next week, we continue our talk with Chief Merkel, where we will discuss what steps Vermont can take to strengthen law enforcement solutions to the opioid crisis.